Malik Thompson had always believed in grand gestures, the kind that movies are made of. So when it came time to propose to Danielle, he knew he wanted to make it unforgettable. He rented out the rooftop of her favorite lounge in downtown Atlanta, gathered their closest family and friends, and arranged for a violinist to play her favorite Anita Baker song. Malik had spent weeks saving for the ring. Nothing flashy, but elegant. He practiced the speech in the mirror for days. Everything was perfect, or so he thought. The moment he dropped to one knee, a hush fell over the rooftop. Danielle looked down at him, eyes wide, but not with joy. She stepped back, visibly irritated. "Are you serious right now?" she said loud enough for everyone to hear. The room tensed. Malik blinked, still kneeling. Danielle crossed her arms and shook her head. "I can't marry a lowlife man like you." The crowd gasped. His mother's hand flew to her chest. Friends shifted uncomfortably. Malik's heart dropped as Danielle turned and stormed off, heels clicking against the tile like bullets. He stayed there, frozen on one knee, surrounded by silence, shame, and the unbearable sting of public rejection. The violinist stopped playing. It was over. Malik stood slowly, chest hollow, eyes burning. He managed a stiff nod to the stunned guests, muttered, "Thanks for coming," and walked away without another word. He didn't stop for comfort, didn't want apologies or hugs. He needed air. Outside, the city felt louder than ever, yet somehow empty. Danielle had known about his financial struggles. He was an assistant project manager working long hours for little recognition. He thought she believed in his potential. He thought love saw beyond money. Clearly, he was wrong, and the way she humiliated him, that was something he wouldn't forget. For weeks, Malik vanished from social gatherings. He deactivated his social media, ignored calls, and focused on surviving the emotional wreckage. The betrayal cut deeper than embarrassment. Danielle hadn't just rejected his proposal. She'd stripped him of his dignity in front of his whole world. What hurt most was that he loved her deeply. They talked about dreams, kids, travel. He saw a future. She saw a stepping stone. Eventually, his mother came to his apartment with a plate of food and a hug. "This pain won't kill you, baby," she said, "but it's gonna teach you something." Those words echoed for months. Malik got back to work. Quiet. Focused. Something in him had shifted. He stopped waiting for praise and started building in silence. He took night courses in real estate development, applied for internal promotions, networked with senior leaders instead of venting to coworkers. When his supervisor left, Malik stepped up without the title or pay. But someone noticed. Mr. Avery, the regional director, pulled him aside one day. "I've been watching you," he said. "You work like a man with something to prove." Malik simply replied, "I work like a man who's done being overlooked." 6 months later, Malik's efforts paid off. He was promoted to senior project manager, overseeing a multi-million-dollar housing development in East Atlanta. The office changed. The tone changed. So did the paycheck. He moved out of his modest one-bedroom and into a sleek two-bedroom condo overlooking the Beltline. Still, he kept his circle small. His best friend Darnell was one of the few people who knew the full story. "Man, you really flipped that pain into power," Darnell said one night over drinks. Malik shrugged. "Nah, I just got tired of being underestimated. First by the company, then by her." Danielle, meanwhile, had faded into silence. Malik hadn't seen or heard from her since the rooftop incident. Rumors floated through mutual friends. She was dating a guy who worked in finance, had taken a job in a PR firm, and had been spotted at a few high-profile events. None of it mattered anymore. Malik had stopped checking her socials, not out of bitterness, but out of peace. Still, something inside him had changed. Love didn't feel the same. Trust came harder, and a version of him that once knelt in hope, that man had grown colder. Then came the gala. West Point Development, Malik's company, was hosting its annual charity gala, a black-tie event with the city's most influential business leaders in attendance. Mr. Avery asked Malik to be the keynote speaker. "People need to hear your story," he said. "Young, black, and thriving in a field that still sees us as rare. You're the future." Malik agreed. He got a custom suit, polished his speech, and prepared himself for the biggest stage of his career. But nothing could prepare him for who would be sitting near the front table that night. Danielle. She was there, arm in arm with a real estate investor whose firm had recently merged with one of West Point's partners. Malik spotted her instantly. Red dress, same confident posture, but a different energy. She didn't see him at first. When she finally did, her smile faltered. Malik didn't react. He turned and greeted other guests, completely composed. His hands didn't shake. His heart didn't race. She no longer had that power. The program began, lights dimmed, and when his name was called, Malik took the stage like he was born for it. He spoke about growth, struggle, and the power of silence. He didn't mention Danielle, didn't mention heartbreak, but every word cut like glass. Sometimes, he said, what feels like rejection is really just redirection. Sometimes the very thing that breaks you is what reveals what you're made of. The room applauded. Standing ovation. Danielle looked stunned. The man she once humiliated was now commanding a room of CEOs, community leaders, and city officials. And she wasn't beside him. She was just another face in the crowd. After the speech, people surrounded Malik like he was a celebrity. Investors handed him business cards, city council members asked for meetings, and young professionals called him an inspiration. Danielle watched from her table, her expression unreadable. Malik noticed her approaching during a break, champagne glass in hand. "You look incredible, Malik," she said, voice softer than he remembered. He nodded. "Thanks." She hesitated. "I've heard so much about what you've done since everything." He kept his eyes steady. "Yeah, I've been busy building." That was all he said. Then he turned to greet another guest. The message was clear. The past had no seat at his table. Danielle didn't take the hint. She waited until the end of the night to approach again, this time catching him outside by the valet. "I owe you an apology," she said. "What I did, how I said it, it was cruel." "I see that now." Malik looked at her for a long moment. The old him would have clung to her words. The new him saw through them. "I'm not angry," he said. "I just realized some people are seasonal. And your season ended the day you chose ego over love." She blinked, stunned. "You think I was just about ego?" Malik smiled. "No, I think you were about convenience." Danielle stepped back, shaken. "You've changed," she whispered. Malik gave a small shrug. "Growth will do that to a man." The valet pulled up with his car, a sleek black BMW he'd paid for in cash. He thanked the driver and turned back to Danielle. "I wish you well, truly, but I'm done watering dead plants." He got in, closed the door, and drove off without looking back. The woman who once made him feel like nothing had just learned what nothing felt like. And he hadn't raised his voice once. In the months that followed, Malik's life only expanded. He was recruited to lead a multi-state expansion project with a six-figure salary and full autonomy. He traveled more, mentored youth in underserved communities, and became a quiet symbol of what resilience looked like. People still asked him if he was dating again. He smiled, always noncommittal. Love would come again, he believed, but next time, it wouldn't be with someone who only loved the polished version. It would be someone who saw the foundation, even before the finish. One Saturday afternoon, Malik sat on his condo balcony overlooking the city, jazz playing softly in the background. His mother called just to check in. "I saw your photo in the paper," she said proudly. "You look strong, baby, like somebody who made it through fire and came out gold." Malik chuckled. "You raised me that way." After they hung up, he sat in silence, feeling a deep calm. He wasn't proving anything anymore. He was just living, and finally, it felt like life was clapping back. A few weeks later, Malik was invited to speak at a leadership summit in D.C., an event aimed at showcasing rising Black leaders in business, politics, and tech. His name was printed on the program, right below some of the biggest names in the country. During a networking mixer the night before the event, an older man approached him and said, "Son, you've got presence. I've been watching you speak, and it's rare, real rare." Malik thanked him. That man would later become a silent investor in Malik's upcoming affordable housing initiative. More doors kept opening, not because Malik was loud, but because he moved with intention. Meanwhile, Danielle had grown quiet. Friends said she'd left her job at the PR firm after her boss was indicted for financial misconduct. Her relationship with the wealthy investor fizzled out. Word was she was working freelance and living in a smaller place now. Malik didn't gloat. He didn't care to. Some stories write themselves. He never told anyone about the proposal night anymore. Not because he forgot, but because the pain had been replaced by purpose. He had outgrown the version of himself who needed closure. Now, he simply built forward. One Sunday afternoon at a bookstore in Decatur, Malik met someone unexpected, Amira, a nonprofit founder with a quiet smile and a mind that challenged him. They talked about books, politics, and healing over coffee for hours. She didn't recognize him from headlines or galas. She knew him only as the man who asked about her favorite author. And that was refreshing. For the first time since Danielle, Malik felt something genuine stirring. Not fireworks, but a slow, steady warmth that felt more real than any performance. Over time, Amira became a soft place for Malik's heart. She didn't ask about his money. She didn't brag about who he was. She asked about his fears, his dreams, his childhood. She cooked for him without asking what he brought to the table. She never made him feel like he had to earn her respect. Malik found himself letting go of old wounds, not because he was forced to, but because healing now felt safe. She reminded him that love didn't have to be loud to be powerful. It could be soft, secure, and still shake your world. By the one-year anniversary of his proposal disaster, Malik had transformed everything. His bank account had grown, sure. His name carried weight in business circles. But more importantly, his peace was intact. He now walked through rooms knowing he belonged, not because he fought for permission, but because he had proven to himself what he was worth. Danielle's name didn't live in his mind anymore. She was a chapter, loud, chaotic, unforgettable, but closed. What came next? That was still unwritten. But this time, Malik was holding the pen. Autumn rolled in quietly, wrapping Atlanta in cool breezes and golden skies. Malik had settled into a new rhythm. Work during the day, community events in the evenings, and quiet weekends with Amira. They often walked hand in hand through Piedmont Park, talking about everything and nothing. One afternoon, Amira stopped mid-step and said, "You know what I admire most about you?" Malik raised an eyebrow. "What?" She smiled. "You're not trying to prove anything. You're just living your truth." That hit Malik harder than he expected. For years, his life had been a quiet mission to prove he was worth staying for. Now, for the first time, he felt accepted just as he was. One chilly Saturday evening, Malik was invited to speak at his alma mater's homecoming event. He stood on stage, looking out over the sea of black college students eager to take on the world. He didn't talk about his job title or awards. Instead, he spoke about that night on the rooftop. "The truth is," he said, "sometimes the most painful rejection is your greatest redirection. And sometimes, your real win is choosing not to shrink, even when someone tries to make you feel small." The room erupted in applause, not because he said something perfect, but because he said something real. After the event, a young man approached him with tears in his eyes. "I was about to drop out," he admitted. "I feel like I'm behind everyone. But your story made me feel seen." Malik put a hand on his shoulder. "You're not behind," he said. "You're just being built." It was a full-circle moment. Malik had spent so much of his life thinking he was late to success. Now he realized he arrived exactly when he was meant to. And that message, that it's okay to rise quietly, was more powerful than any business deal he'd ever close. A few weeks later, Malik received a wedding invitation in the mail. It was from a distant cousin, but inside, tucked behind the RSVP card, was a note. Handwritten, from Danielle. "I heard you're speaking again. You were always meant for bigger stages. I'm happy for you. Genuinely." Malik stared at it for a moment, then folded it and placed it in a drawer. He didn't feel angry. He didn't feel anything. That chapter had been read, reread, and shelved. He had a new book to write now. And in this one, there would be no begging for love. That night, Malik made dinner with Amira in his apartment. They danced to old-school R&B in the kitchen, her laughter filling the room like sunshine. When she leaned in and kissed his cheek, Malik felt something he hadn't felt in years, safety. Not from titles or applause, but from knowing the woman beside him didn't love him for his shine, She loved him for his scars. And in that moment, he finally understood. The proposal that broke him was never meant to be his happy ending. It was just the earthquake that cleared the path to something deeper, something real. The year closed with celebration. Malik's firm secured a new contract to lead a sustainable housing project in a historically black neighborhood in Birmingham. It wasn't just about profit, it was about legacy. He worked closely with city leaders, ensuring the homes were affordable, the construction teams were local, and the vision centered around empowering the community. He invited Amira to the groundbreaking ceremony. As they stood on the plot of land that would soon hold dozens of new homes, she squeezed his hand. "You're building more than houses," she whispered. "You're rebuilding what people thought they lost." Malik nodded. That was the mission all along. At a small year-end dinner with his core team, Malik raised a toast. To the closed doors, he said. To the silent nights, the heartbreaks, and the setbacks. They shaped us, but they didn't break us. They built us. Glasses clinked. Laughter followed. The man who had once stood humiliated in front of his loved ones now stood as a leader, a healer, and a man who never let pain define him. His journey had not been easy, but it had been honest, and that was something no one could take from him. He started journaling again, something he hadn't done since college. In his quiet moments, he wrote letters to his younger self. He thanked that version for holding on, even when everything felt like it was falling apart. He apologized for the times he measured his worth through someone else's eyes. And he promised never to kneel again for a love that made him question his value. Every sentence felt like freedom. Every page, a reminder that healing doesn't come in a moment. It comes in choosing peace over pride, again and again. One Sunday morning, Malik and Amira sat in church, sunlight pouring through stained glass. During the sermon, the pastor said, "Sometimes God lets them walk out because he knows where you're going, and they're not meant to go with you." Malik leaned back, eyes closed. It made sense now. Danielle didn't ruin his life. She rerouted it. She showed him who didn't belong in the next chapter. And thanks to that pain, he was sitting beside someone who loved him, not for what he became, but for who he was all along. As spring approached, Malik stood once more on a rooftop, this time much quieter, more intimate. He turned to Amira, holding a simple ring with trembling hands. "I've been broken before," he said softly, "but you made healing feel like home." Tears welled in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered before he could finish. This time, there was no crowd, no performance, just love. Real, quiet, unshakable love. Malik smiled through misty eyes, finally kneeling, not to prove himself, but to honor the journey that brought him here. And this time she stayed.